Hi, everyone. Welcome to Healthy Air. Joining me today from Southern California is Loren Witkin, CEO and founder of Citadel EHS. Loren, welcome to Healthy Air.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be with you today.
So I want to share a brief background on Loren in order to provide context for our conversation. Witkin founded Citadel with the goal of creating an employee and client-focused consulting firm that fused a thorough understanding of the built environment with the fields of environmental health, safety, and sustainability. As part of his vision to bring all employees into ownership roles, Loren drove the formation of the firm's ESOP in 2003, while simultaneously overseeing all phases of corporate development, client management, and complex project management across multiple disciplines. A creative and focused leader, Loren has over 30 years of experience in environmental health and safety industry, both in the public and private sectors, with numerous state, federal, and industry accreditations and certifications to his name. During his career, Loren has served as a panel member, speaker, and presenter on various EHS matters to universities, public agencies, cities, school districts, and industry conferences nationwide. He held tenure at UCLA as one of the first asbestos-led program managers in California, where he developed policies relating to the identification, remediation of environmental contaminants for 17 million plus square feet of property. He's also a founding corporate partner of UCLA's Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, a member of the Los Angeles Downtown Breakfast Club, and of the Urban Land Institute. All right. Well, very impressive background. Let's dive into the questions. Tell us about your career path to the world of environmental health and safety.
Okay. Well, I did this like everybody else. What I did is I avoided all the math classes I could. I avoided science classes and all the engineering classes that I possibly could. And I went on to get a liberal arts degree in, of all things, political science. So I think I'm pretty well suited to be in the environmental industry. What happened was I always wanted to be a lawyer. That was the path I was taking. And when I was at UCLA, I ended up taking a job on campus for their Office of Environmental Health and Safety. And I had two really terrific bosses there. And they said, look, you can either go on to law school or you can stay with this field. And since environmental was new at the time, they were about health and safety, but environmental was really sort of a new burgeoning industry with as far as regulations and so forth. And they threw so much responsibility at me. And that's the path that I ended up staying on. And I think what's interesting about it is taking a bit of a layperson's perspective on this industry is helpful in a sense, because it helps take the technical and translate it to the familiar, because we're really good about jargon. I also think being a bit of a layperson helps keep me outside of maybe some of our staffers and the true scientists and the smart people. So I don't interfere too much with them.
Yeah. Well, awesome story, and funny how life works out. You've been a real trailblazer and leader in lead poisoning and abatement, and you kind of referenced that in your bio. How did you end up on that issue in particular? How did you find that problem and then end up spending so much time and effort on it?
Well, so what happened was that, we started on the asbestos side. That's what was taking up a lot of the gravity at the time. And that's where I sort of started. And then we started to recognize that there were other hazards associated with the built environment. And it wasn't just about asbestos, and lead was one of those issues. And it was a little more pernicious, and it was a little bit more of an acute kind of issue. And so I think it was one of the associations that reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to give us an industry perspective, an owner's perspective on this? And, just bringing a collaborative approach to it. And it's something, lead poisoning was pretty, being a father of young kids at the time, it was very topical for me.
Got it. All right. So fast forwarding, you obviously have done a lot of really impactful and exciting stuff, but it's culminated.
My kids wouldn't say that, so just so you know. My wife's on board.
Well, they never do, but I'll puff you up a little bit. The past couple of decades has really been about Citadel, and you founded Citadel, and you've really built it into a real leader in the space. What motivated you to found your own firm, and then specifically, you have focused on ESOP, And ESOP is a way of creating kind of more ownership amongst both the employees and clients. So talk about that piece of the business as well, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack that a little bit. The first part about how did we start Citadel? I would say I was sort of an unwitting entrepreneur. It wasn't our intent initially to start a company. What happened is when I was at UCLA, we had the privilege to work with a lot of different consultants, and they came from a lot of different backgrounds: oil and gas, laboratory, ecological. And what I found is that the university being a low bid environment is that we were getting change order to death on environmental issues. And I didn't see that consultants had a thorough understanding of the built environment, of where we spend most of our time. And so when we thought about Citadel, we wanted to build a firm that was built on understanding the built environment, how it was developed, how it was operated, deconstructed. And so that was sort of the impetus for creating Citadel. As far as the ESOP side, the employee ownership side, so you're right, we are 100% employee owned. And the thought to that was that we want to share what we make with those that make it. I play a role, but it's all the other people and all the roles that they do. And I wanted to underscore to them how important they are. Their roles are different than mine, but they're equally as important. And so I thought, well, let's put our money where our mouth is and let's give them ownership. They didn't have to buy ownership. We gave them ownership. And it includes every person in the company, from the person that answers the phones, the person that processes invoices, and anything in between.
That is very admirable and also unique amongst other companies in your space. Have you seen that leads not only to kind of better talent recruitment, but also then retention of employees, and the types of employees are getting in the door and then keeping them there?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is a great retention tool. And it's a great collaborative tool too, because people start to think like owners and act like owners. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for people, because ESOP concept is somewhat a difficult one to understand, because it's not just shares of stock. It's more of a retirement kind of program. So when you have younger staff, they're not always understanding the importance of retirement when they're thinking about just, I've got to pay my rent. I've got a car payment. I need to take my significant other out on a date. I want W-2 wages. So retirement is somewhere into the future. But my thought was that if we can think about them before they're thinking about themselves, then that would be, really meaningful to me and fulfilling to me. So, so that was sort of the importance of the ESOP. And as far as the staff, it helps us recruit. I just did an interview yesterday with someone who'd been with another firm for 16 years. And I said, why? Why us? Why now? And they led with ownership culture. And so I thought that was really interesting. I look at the average tenure of our staff, and they've been here for quite a long time. So yeah, it's very rewarding, and it's great for the clients too. They get to see the same staff year over year.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So, give us a sense of Citadel EHS's mission focus, the scale and scope of the business, and paint the picture for our audience and what Citadel is up to these days.
Okay, so we are an environmental health, safety, and sustainability consulting company. That's what we do. We're about 60 plus employees scattered about California, primarily Southern California. We've got multiple offices, and it's more or less for it's Southern California. It's just a difficult place to get around, and so we've got multiple offices so that people can get to an office. Back in the day when they went to offices, they could get there pretty quickly without being exhausted by the time they got there and needing a break just from the traffic. So we've got these multiple offices. How we're structured is we've got practice leads in charge of each of these various disciplines. We just recently added ESG and sustainability as a new practice. So we've got a new practice lead. It's about 2 weeks into it. Our organizing principle is providing environmental health, safety, and sustainability for the life cycle of real estate and business. And that's sort of throughput. That's why we do all of the things that we do, is so that we can support our clients primarily in the built environment, in managing the risk, reputation, and so forth.
Great. How is Citadel different from other environmental consulting firms? You hit on one of the points with the ESOP, but how else?
Okay, so the first thing I've got to mention is that there are some great competitors out there, and we like to. I think pretty highly of our competition, and hopefully they think highly of us too. And I use competition in a loosely kind of way because I think that there's a lot of ways that we can collaborate. There's a lot of companies that do exactly what we do, but we work closely together, either to extend our geography or skill base or whatever. So there are a lot of great companies out there. But I think some things that differentiate us, maybe two in particular. One is this understanding of the built environment, the environment that we spend all of our time. The ecological side, the natural side is super important. That is one of our stakeholders, as we call it. But the built environment, understanding how buildings are purchased, developed, operated, and then deconstructed, I think is fundamental to us. The other part of it is that people describe us as sometimes as the biggest small company or the smallest big company. Everyone's really probably pretty amazed about the processes that we have, the systems that we have, and just the level of staff that we've got. And we've got staff that have worked for the largest companies in the world kind of thing, and then they'd rather do it on our scale. And we do business with the largest companies in the world as well. So I think those are two differentiators.
Mm-hmm. So air quality is one of your defined service areas. Obviously, we've had a lot of in air quality challenges. I mean, long-standing ones, but the past couple of years in California have been particularly intense with the wildfires, pandemic, and other challenges. What did this service area look like pre-pandemic? What does it look like during the pandemic? And what do you think it will look like post-pandemic? And I'll just leave it there.
Okay, so let's talk about what it looked like pre-pandemic. Indoor air quality was important, but it was more of it was about comfort. It was about ASHRAE standards. It was, am I too hot? Am I too cold? Is it stuffy and so forth? And that's the genesis of a lot of the issues that we were in this response mode for. And I think that I'd underscore response mode. We were always sort of responding to it. What changed with the pandemic is that the environment, the indoor environment, became much more important, that it's not as dangerous as refining environment, manufacturing or what have you, but there were real health issues associated with the spread of diseases and pathogens in an indoor environment. And so I think it took on more importance. Now, during the pandemic, what happened to IAQ and the importance of it? Well, at the beginning, absolutely nothing happened with it. And what was so interesting to me is that our industrial hygiene and safety group, which manages indoor air quality issues, they had the worst month. March was their strongest month probably in their history. And April probably was the weakest month in their entire history as well. And you're thinking, we've got a pandemic and we've got the practice lead is an epidemiologist by education, and we're going to have the worst performance ever by a group. And it was because no one was in the offices. No one was in the building. So during the pandemic at the beginning, it totally went away. We are now seeing it really ramping up. We're getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of panicky, help us. We've got to get staff back in. What are we going to do? So I think extended the question, did you have, were you talking about the future too?
Yeah, well, and I guess just on the air quality side of things, interested to just hear your perspective, given your experience with lead. Do you see any similarities in terms of people becoming aware of a risk that may have existed, that then something just kind of blew the lid off of, and that risk may have always been there, but now it's like, before it was kind of swept aside or not really addressed, and now people are like, wow, I never, the pandemic certainly has been a challenge, but by the way, the air quality in many buildings is pretty poor, and now there's just much wider public awareness and concern about it.
Yeah. So going back to the point about where it was pre-pandemic, that it was just about comfort. And now people started to recognize that this is potentially really a health issue to them. It did start to change the thinking about, from the employee standpoint, from the vendor standpoint, from the landlord standpoint. It started to really change the nature of the conversations and their thinking about it. And the similarities are that it's all about ventilation. Right. The solution to pollution is dilution. That's sort of one of those sayings that we have. Right. And so it doesn't matter if you're talking about the biological or the physical or the chemical. Ventilation is is crucial, and understanding how the systems, your building systems work, your HVAC systems work. That's crucial to preventing these issues. So yeah, there is certainly an intersectionality of these industries and these businesses.
So you and Citadel position yourselves as a firm that provides EHS services to the built environment. And then your practice areas are split out into air quality in several areas, building sciences, engineering sciences, safety. Has the past year or two, with all the air quality challenges that we've experienced, changed how you think about structuring yourself, how you're offering these services to clients? And specifically, what we have seen, or what I have seen, is much more of a push within many service organizations like yours, where they're reorganizing around high performance building groups or healthy building groups that are taking several different areas, touching the building, but then kind of bucketing air quality and engineering services and safety. In some ways, the nature of the risk is kind of spanning all of those. So has the past couple of years, and specifically with respect to IAQ, kind of changed how you think you need to be organizing yourself, and then what it looks like on the client side, giving them a real complete kind of integrated set of services?
So fortunately, I think we matched up well to the situation at hand, in that we provided all of these various services along the life cycle of real estate. And what's changed is not necessarily how we have structured ourselves, but the importance of collaboration between all of the groups is very important. Okay, so for instance, if I take a look at the development side, and that's our engineering and environmental sciences side, they're the phase 1, phase 2 subsurface individuals. Right now, a lot of the development that we're doing is adaptive reuse. It's urban infill. We're going into environments and repurposing sites that were really never intended for human occupancy, let's say, not for like multifamily housing or what have you. And so what happens is vapor intrusion is a really big deal on their side. Well, vapor intrusion is about indoor air quality, right? So that starts to now trip into just industrial hygiene and safety and their components of indoor air quality. Then I take a look at our sustainability side, and the sustainability side is really also about healthy buildings and wellness. And that's another reason why we pulled that in. And so obviously, they're all about indoor air quality, right? So the connections between these groups are very important. They need to be talking to one another, and they need to be understanding, who's going to take the lead on this and how are these pieces going to work. So yeah, without a doubt, that idea of indoor air quality, it now sort of envelops or overlays all of our service lines. Even on building sciences, which is toxics associated with the built environment, they're having to manage asbestos and lead and PCBs and other types of things that potentially will intrude into an indoor environment. That's what we're concerned about, airborne particulate primarily.
Got it. So kind of getting your perspective from the front lines dealing with clients.
Yeah.
What are the concerns that you're hearing from clients these days? What are they thinking about? Where are they worried? What's keeping them up at night? And then how are you helping them through these challenges? And I guess, indoor air quality is obviously something that Safe Traces focuses on, but that is one of many challenges that buildings face, from sustainability, also just the vacancy of buildings creating risks for things like Legionella. So what are you hearing? It's a general question, but you're touching a lot of customers in a lot of industries. So where are the concerns these days?
Eric, you've got great questions, and I probably should have had 2 cups of coffee this morning, but these are great. So I think what's keeping them awake a bit is they're concerned about staff, and they're concerned about staff on 2 folds. One, they're concerned about just the well-being of staff. There's a lot of good employers out there, but they're also concerned about retaining staff and recruiting staff and hiring staff. Right now, there's a lot of places and a lot of opportunities for employees to go to. And not only that, but there's a lot of opportunities for tenants to go different places. So when I talk about employers, I'm also talking about landlords too. So I think they want to preserve who they've got. They also want to make sure that they're able to return them to their environment, and that they can articulate what they've done, and that it will provide comfort for the employees and for the tenants to return. So I think that's part of what keeps them up. Now, the next step is, what do we do next? There's a lot of shiny objects out there. There's a lot of purveyors of different technologies that are available to them, and they're asking their friends, what are you guys doing? Are you guys, you're using UVC. You guys are using MERV 13s, all of these kinds of things. And so I think that with all the shiny objects, there's a little bit of confusion in the marketplace of where do we invest that capital? How are we going to spend our money wisely that is going to withstand these questions about what have you done for our safety? But also, they don't want to look foolish that they've retrofitted all their systems, they've invested a lot of capital and not gotten a benefit out of it. So I think that market confusion and what shiny object should we buy, I think is important to them. What we are doing is, we're consultants. We have no horse in the race. We're agnostic to the solution. We don't have a product that like, buy this. This is going to be the cure-all. We're not peddling that. We're agnostic to the solution. We want to be independent. We want to provide options to them and then let them make the educated, informed decisions. And I think that it allows them to get out of the paralysis of not making any decisions, because that's a decision in and of itself. And they can actually make some informed decisions.
So just to follow up to your comments, are you seeing a willingness of clients to spend both on your services and then actually make capital investments into buildings for any technologies? Or because for a period during the pandemic, buildings were just shut and much of the commercial real estate industry just seemed to be kind of in hibernation mode, not wanting to spend. Is that changing now? Are you seeing people kind of open up the wallets and pocketbooks to spend on services and make major investments in the buildings from a safety standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. There were a number of our clients they never left the office, sort of like really leave the office. So they were making some investments then. But now with return to work on the campus side, higher ed, we're seeing a lot of conversations and a lot of requests. So as I had said, that April was like the worst month of last year for our industrial hygiene and safety group. Now they're having their best months. We can't find enough staff, qualified staff. So it's really starting to ramp up. People are still hesitant because, things change pretty frequently about, are we opening? Are we not opening? Now we've got this Delta variant. And so I think people don't want to be ahead. They don't want to be the early adopters of some of this stuff. But they are also recognizing they can't wait too much longer. And our recommendation is start thinking about it, start having conversations, start working out various plans and options. Don't sit and wait, partly because there's not that many resources available right now. And if you wait too long, everyone's dance cards are going to be full. And you want to be not having any strategy or any way of communicating what you've done.
Got it. So you talked a bit about the kind of landlord or owner side of things. Now let's flip over to the worker, the tenant occupant side of things. So if you are a worker or tenant getting ready to return to the office or to school, if you're a teacher or student, or various different people who are in buildings who have not been in those buildings over the past year or so, should you be feeling confident about workplace safety? And what questions should you be asking your employer, your owner, regarding what they're doing, and what should you be doing at an individual level to keep yourself safe?
Okay, so I'm gonna back into that. I'm gonna start with the last part first. So what can you do? First of all, is don't come to work sick. Don't encourage others to come to work sick. What we've seen now is that everyone's been locked up. And so now people are coming out. They hadn't been exposed to anything. Their immune systems are actually sort of compromised, right? And so now people are getting sick pretty easily. So I would say hopefully that will be one change that will happen in the future, is that we won't have any heroes. And I think I'm one of them. I'm always like, I've got this. I can come to work. If you're sick, don't come to work. Don't just come to work. I think that's, you're not proving the point to anybody. So I think that's important. As far as the questions that they could be asking is, I think that it's perfectly logical. It's understandable for landlord or for tenants and for employees to ask. So what have you done? What's the plan? Articulate, how will you keep us safe? And they should be able to do that. They should be able to have a plan that's not just a bunch of pages that sits on a shelf, but there should be something that was a strategy and a plan and something that's been implemented and that it makes sense. So I think those are all reasonable questions to ask.
So we've talked quite a bit about the pandemic, maybe just switching gears to another major air quality set of challenges we've had in California in the West last year. And then it's looking like it's maybe another rough year on the wildfire front.
Yeah.
How has Citadel been involved in supporting clients on wildfire-related challenges? And talk to us a little bit about that if you have.
Yeah. If I think back along my career of whatever it's been, 34 years or so, wildfires, that was never one of our concerns. Or, I think that the first time we started getting wildfire requests from our clients just a few years ago. And what's interesting about that, and sad at the same time, is that we always start writing these paragraphs and putting this fire in context. And we'll always be like, this was the largest fire in U.S. history, and before the digital ink is dry, we're already like scrapping that and saying that's the second largest, the third largest, or whatever. Every year seems to be worse and worse and worse. And it's certainly impacting our clients. So what we're trying to do, again, is try to be proactive. We can't control if there's going to be wildfires or not, but we can start to control how do we respond? What do we have in place? Do we have written plans in place? Do we know how our ventilation systems work so we can start to shut down dampers and air intakes? Do we have personal protective equipment on hand? What is our cleaning protocol going to be? How are we going to monitor it? So we can't control the situation, but we can control how we respond to it. And this idea of just not doing anything, I don't think is okay. Hope is not a strategy. Not doing anything is not really a strategy. It is a strategy, but I don't think it's a very sound strategy. My suggestion is get out in front of it to the extent that you can. Recognize that these things are going to occur. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And have a plan about what you're going to do and understand your systems. Have consultants, have contractors already engaged, ready to go. Just like we do with other hazardous materials that we've done for years and years and years. Do that. I know that there's costs associated, but I think there's difference between first costs and last costs. And if you invest, you have an opportunity to prevent those large lingering costs too. Plus, I think it would probably help with insurance as well to say, hey, we've got a plan. This is all the things we've done, and I think that carriers are going to feel a little bit more risk tolerant with you.
Mm-hmm. So for the balance of this year and then moving into 2022, which obviously no one knows what the future will hold, but you're kind of looking out on the horizon over the next year and a half. What do you think will be the drivers of your business? And what are specifically the big opportunities that you see? And what are the big challenges or risks that you see?
Mm-hmm. So I think some of the drivers, since we work with the built environment, is the amount of capital that is available that's out there, both on the public side, as you've seen the infrastructure bill, bills that are pending right now. It's a huge amount of money that they're talking about in infrastructure. So we see through airports and ports and roads and so forth, there's going to be a ton of spending on that side. We also see that there's so much capital on the private side that's waiting to be deployed and they have to deploy their money if they're REITs or what have you. They have to deploy it. So I think we're going to see just a tremendous amount of capital come into the system. Something that we've been saying all along is this is not a demand issue. This is a supply issue. It's supply with regards to materials, with regards to labor, with regards to energy. That is the challenge. It's not going to be the demand side. There's more money out there. The other challenge to it is with regards to the availability of labor and the brain drain that we've seen. We've seen a lot of people retire on the client side. We haven't seen it on our side, but we will see it in the next few years. And it's who's going to step up behind them. And so that is one of the challenges. The opportunity is that it gives you an opportunity to start to grow staff and to promote them and so forth. But so I think that's where we see some of the opportunities and challenges. I also see, like with the Olympics, World Cup coming to our region, that there will be more opportunities as well. And just being in the West, there's so many different industries taking place. Entertainment right now. We've watched everything on Netflix, right? So we're waiting for all these shows to be caught up. So it's going to be gangbusters on so many different fronts.
Can we pick up on the brain drain for a second? So the kind of safety industry, and at least the safety service industry, is a really exciting place, but you have a lot of really seasoned veterans who've had decades of experience working in industrial hygiene and otherwise. Do you believe that the kind of next generation of people who are maybe not 30 years into their career, but 10 to 15 are ready to step up to that next level? And then do you think that the profession, broadly defined, is doing a good job kind of attracting new talent to kind of come in and build the future of leaders in the industry? You mentioned labor being such an issue. It would be interesting to hear your perspective on whether the ranks are being replenished and whether kind of that next generation of leadership is being built within the field.
Okay, so I'm going to be sort of critical on that. And no, I don't think as an industry, I don't think as a society, we're doing a good enough job on it. And what I mean by that is that we're seeing a lot of kids track into sustainability programs and environmental programs. And that's very rewarding. But at the end of the day, there are limited jobs on that side of the equation, particularly if they come out of school with a liberal arts degree. I started off with what my background is. I wouldn't hire me today. Unfortunately, I probably wouldn't get a shot at an interview. So I think we need to start to channel people and let them understand the other industries that are available to them. I don't know if there's anyone that I've ever met that said, any child that's been like, I'm going to be an industrial hygienist. No one even knows what industrial hygienist means. It's such a weird term, And so I think we need to do a much better job of educating people about what our industry looks like. But on the safety side, I'm not sure if a lot of people go, oh my gosh, safety sounds so exciting. But once they get into it, they realize what a rewarding career the environmental health, safety, and sustainability can be. So as an industry, I think we need to do a better job of promoting it, what that really truly means. And maybe that's more internships or what have you. And I think the universities are really missing an opportunity to start to take some of their kids and start to channel them into these industries. Often talking to students about, sustainability is an amazing thing. We need it. But look, there's our built environment. You can take your STEM education and you can channel it this way. And kids coming out of school are making really great salaries right now. We also are competing against the tech side too, is that the Googles and the Amazons, they're gobbling up a lot of tech. So I think we need to show them that there's a path forward that is a very rewarding career. In my 38 years, there's never been a day that I've ever thought, oh my gosh, am I going to have a job? Am I kind of, what am I going to do today? It's never, ever happened. And as far as the brain drain, I think the way that you learn in our industry is by doing. It takes some gray hair and some seasoning because you may have a foundation of education and technology, but you have to have seen scenarios first. And I could go on a sort of a whole soapbox on this, but there's the technical side, but there's the personal side, the interpersonal skills. And often kids that are coming out of science-oriented programs, they avoided taking writing classes. public speaking classes, communication classes. Well, that's super important to be able to translate the technical into the layperson stuff. And eventually you're not just going to be doing technical work, you're going to be managing people, and you've got to have those skills. So I think we could do a whole lot better collectively, and from an education standpoint, from an industry standpoint.
Got it. All right. Well, so you mentioned that Citadel has recently launched a sustainability practice, and you just mentioned it in your previous comments. So there are really two big themes within the built environment today. I mean, there are many themes, but two that are really top of mind are sustainability on the one hand, and then health and safety on the other. And you're kind of playing in both of those spaces. Where are those two trends aligned, and where is there tension that we should be aware of?
Okay, that is a terrific question. And I think about that all the time, because there is, and the word that you used is the word that I think of too, is there is this inherent tension between the two, right? So if you think about the energy efficiency side, you start thinking about tighter buildings, energy efficiency, and so forth. You start to think about the health and safety side, and what do we keep on coming back to? Ventilation, filtration. Those are energy hogs, right? We want to use more indoor or outdoor air. Well, the climate's heating up. We're having to cool more air. Recirculating air certainly doesn't help on the wellness side. There is definitely this potential conflict. And like you said, in my own organization, I've got both sides, right? And what's actually interesting is on the sustainability practice, it's they also do well performance testing and so forth. So they actually have both. They have the sustainability side, and they've got the interior side too, and this competing interest. We saw this with regards to LEED. We built our headquarters is a LEED Platinum building, and it was I think it was it was 1 out of 10 in the entire state of California when we built it, and like 1 out of 84 in the entire country when we did it. And we saw with LEED was these conflicts as well, that we were trying to add skylights and do all of these kinds of things, but there is a risk to the workers building that building. In Las Vegas, there was a building that was built. It's a LEED building. I think they lost 6 employees, workers, on building this building because they had they fell through skylights, all these kinds of things that were related to green in a sense. So there is this potential conflict. And we do have to find alignment. I think where that alignment is going to come in, it's going to come in with regards to innovation and technology, is how we're going to find how we can still be energy efficient, but we can still cool outdoor air and increase ventilation and so forth. So I think that's going to be the intersection. It's going to be technology is going to solve this for us.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. So what technologies do you think are going to be really critical to helping address some of these tensions or be able to thread the needle between the two? So, hardware, sensors, I mean, there's no end of technology that exists right now for buildings. Which ones do you think are going to really matter over the next 5 to 10 years?
So certainly the energy side of it, where we derive that energy from, I think will be important. But I think that the buildings are going to get smarter. Well, I'll start first, and the technology we use to assess the buildings will get smarter. And that's sort of, talking about Veridar and talking about safe traces, that's part of it. When I think about the industry that I got into, and some of the tools we were using to assess buildings back then, we're still using some of those same tools now. So it's the innovation of technology that allows us to do the assessments. I think it's really important. It gives us more insight and information into what needs to change. I think the buildings themselves, how they're going to change is that they're going to get smarter. We're going to get more feedback from the buildings. With AI, I think the buildings are going to know us a little bit better. They're going to know our preference for temperatures, for lighting, for music, those kinds of things. So I think that we're going to see that improvement take place. The days of us using buildings as sort of the static environment that we walk into and the building just sort of happens upon us, where we walk in and we're like, oh, it's cold, I'm going to have to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to put up some kind of manila folder over events, all those things that we see. I think that will start to change. I think that the buildings will start to perform better and they will work with us, and we will have more influence over our immediate environment.
How do you stay on top of a highly dynamic and complex market? What you and Citadel focus on is just changing all the time, just day by day, week by week. Who are you speaking with? What are you reading? Whose opinion do you really respect? Give us a sense of how you're keeping your finger on the pulse.
TikTok. It's all TikTok. I just watch TikTok, and I think I've got it all now. I know what to buy on Amazon. I know what dances are great. I know the music. So I'd say TikTok. No, other than that, I think that it takes having a lot of the questions. It's sharing information like this. I think is vitally important. Looking at a lot of different industry groups. We belong to AEG and PSMJ and all these other acronym groups, and we're constantly reading what information they're putting out so we can understand the markets. And I also think that we have to challenge ourselves. We have to read things that we don't necessarily always want to read, opinions that maybe not align with us. So I try to make sure that I'm sort of scanning the media to see what's out there. Even on the radio, sometimes if I'm listening to podcasts, I'm going to try to make sure I'm getting different perspectives on stuff. So one is not ignoring it, but just getting out and reading and participating. It could be the ULIs. There's a lot of organizations providing good information. From what I'm reading is, I read the Wall Street Journal every day, and I really I like the perspective that I get. I get a lot of information from sort of industry from the ownership standpoint. And since I'm trying to consult with them, I need to understand what their concerns are, what the directions are. And now I can come up with solutions as well. The thing about our industry, if people say, well, why do we have to do any of these things? Well, often there's a regulation. There's a standard. There's the threat of liability. There's something that compels them. They have to do those things. Sometimes, like on the sustainability side, or even on indoor air quality, about doing the right thing, that's a harder conversation to have. And it usually means that we have to talk to the CFO or talk to someone else about that. But we're starting to see some types of changes a little bit, that companies are doing the right thing for a lot of different reasons. And by us reading, learning, understanding their perspectives, I think that's helping. Someone once said, and I'm pretty sure it's John Wooden, he had said, it's actually Stephen Covey said, understand before being understood. And what John Wooden said was, I've never learned anything when my lips were moving. And I think,
that's both are great quotes, but always great. Quote John Wooden, especially with a UCLA alum. So just to close out, this is.
I didn't alienate half the audience there by saying I was UCLA alum.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we appreciate it. So great discussion. Really grateful to you. I want to give you the floor for any parting thoughts with the audience before we break here.
Well, thanks. I really did enjoy it. And thanks for inviting me and asking really thoughtful questions too. It gave me an opportunity to sort of contemplate that. I want to thank you guys too. I'm a user of technology. I don't invent a lot of technology. And I know there's a lot of people that talk about, I'd like to do this, right? And you guys actually do that. You translated something that was important. You translated it into a product that's really important to us. And so thank you for that. I sometimes think that if you gave me a roll of duct tape and a Swiss Army knife and you put me in the woods, how long would it take me to come up with like an iPad? And it would never happen. I would still be living, probably without any clothes under some rocks at best. So I appreciate smart people like you guys, and I appreciate you guys bringing some pretty smart tools to us to use. So thank you.
Great. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you so much again. And we wish you the best and look forward to seeing what Citadel and you and your team will be up to in the coming months. Thank you again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eric.